Hey, I want to send you this video to answer some of the questions that you had and you'd sent me about Appalachian music, and I want to thank you for asking me to do this. I appreciate it, and sorry it took so long to get it to you. I've been pretty sick for the last month, but I'm feeling much better today. So here we go. So the first question was, how did you first get involved with Appalachian music? And the question, that's a good question. And I was born into it basically. Growing up in Trout, um, it was all family, where I grew up, all the way up and down the hollers. My granddad and all his brothers and sisters were mostly right there in the valley, and as well as my older cousins and such, and they all played Appalachian music. A lot of people call it bluegrass, but it's a different thing. It's not bluegrass. Old time music, Appalachian music, is a different thing than bluegrass. And while they share some of the same traits in instrumentation, obviously, it's a completely different style of music, really, um, and it's rooted in a different tradition. And bluegrass basically grew out of old time in Appalachian music. So that's how I first got involved. Was basically I was born into it, and when I was 12 years old, um, my great uncle Tilton, who played banjo, he had a homemade banjo that he had made many years before, and a lot of times in the summertime he'd sit out there on his porch and play it, and I always did the chores for all of my aunts and uncles in the evenings, and so I would go up there to do all the chores for him, split kindling, carrying water and coal, and whatever needed to be done for the day. Nobody had running water and or indoor toilets, so there was a lot of stuff that needed to get done every day, and hand pump wells and things of that nature, and carrying the water in buckets. But anyway, he would sit on the porch and play, and I always would sit there and listen to him. And one day, when I was about 12, he asked me if I wanted to learn to play a little bit on it, and I said yes, I did. And so he taught me some chords and how to play it a little bit in his style, which was an old what they called Carolina drop thumb, or that's at least what they all called it. It was sort of a cross between um, a frailing banjo no, I can't remember the other style. Anyway, frailing and drop thumb, we'll say. But anyway, it was his own style, and that's kind of how I learned to play. And that's also how it was part of growing up, was that I was always around it. They all played all the time. They would get together in the evenings, on weekends, and just play the old music. I know that one of my granddad's brothers played banjo and fiddle and guitar. My granddad played guitar, and they all sang. And like I say, I had older cousins that were banjo champions and things like that were there. And so I just, heard a lot of it. And like I say, it wasn't really bluegrass as much as it was just the old style Appalachian music. And there's actually a pretty long history of musicians in my family. Their father, my great grandfather, he was a well-known regional fiddle player, and some of his uncles were old time musicians. Now this would have been back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, so well over 100 years ago, 150 years ago, just about now. Um, so yeah, I come from a long line of musicians. And why do you think that it matters to the communities it comes from? And basically, the reason that it matters is it's a passed down tradition. It's a touchstone for a lot of people uh, from learning, you know, the music, the traditions, the stories from their fathers or grandfathers or great uncles or what have you, um, and just the elders in their community. And I think that's why it still matters and why it's still a vibrant uh, musical style and genre. And have you passed your skill to anyone? And I honestly haven't. I have a son that is a musician, but he's not very interested in playing that type of music, and he hasn't been around it any, really. Um, you know, I used to go to the Cliff Top musical gathering over in Cliff Top, West Virginia, which is all old time and fiddle music and things of that nature. Augusta, in Charleston and Elkins, um, and those kind of things that really keep that tradition alive of the old Appalachian music and the old time music. But no, I unfortunately haven't been able to pass much of my skill on to anyone else. What do you hope future generations understand about it? Well, the main thing that I would hope that they understand about it is that it is part of their heritage. It belongs to them. It's well, maybe for these most recent generations, it's less of a touchstone for them because the world has changed so much with technology and everything that I think that it would be less of a touchstone these days. I was probably the last generation of people that grew up without the technology, being a part of their, especially early lives. We didn't even have computers in school when I was in school. So I think my senior year we finally got some computers and had computer lab, but it's a different time. Um, so it was less of a it's less of a thing now. I think for the last couple of generations, especially, um, just because of the technology and they don't spend the time with their elders that a lot of us did, and I think that's a sad thing, but it is the way of the world and the way things go sometimes. But that would be what I hope they understand the most is that it is a part of their heritage. It is part of who they are, and the young people that I do know, and I might go into the next part about how younger generations get involved without changing the heart of the traditions. Um, the ones that I know that have gotten into it that are younger, um, they really have delved into the real meat of it, the old time of um, the fiddle traditions, um, fiddle songs, uh, traditional music, traditional instrumentation. Um, when I go to places like Cliff Top, or even some of the bands and stuff that I play with and sit in with, and have played with over the years that are younger musicians that are coming up. Um, I, the main thing that has struck me about it is the fact that they really get into to the heavy tradition of it. And as far as changing the heart of it, I've never believed in that kind of thing. It's kind of like the bluegrass tradition. There is no such thing. Even Bill Monroe said, you know, it's not a tradition. We took something old and made it new again, and so things change, um, and people get really caught up in tradition of it, and it's good to have the foundational traditions, but it's also good to take things like that and make it your own, and put your own heart into it and your own traditions into it. And if you're one of the ones that really likes to, you know, really work in the traditional sense of it, that's okay too. I mean, that's an excellent thing if you're wanting to work in the confines of, what the traditional old time or Appalachian music group would be, um, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But it's also good to take something like that and turn it into something for you, and that's what most of them did, and that's how new things, old things become new, just like Monroe said, and I think that that's as important as adhering to the old traditions as well. And I do believe that those things don't have to be mutually exclusive, and I don't believe that there should be gatekeeping per se of what is and isn't accepted in a certain genre of music, especially in a genre of music that is as old as Appalachian music. It comes from the old countries. It comes from Scotland and Ireland and Europe as a whole, and also blended with the African traditions from the slaves, and even the British jigs, and their things. But in Appalachia, it's more about the coming together of the Irish, the Native Americans, the black traditions, because Appalachia is different, and it was more of a melting pot than anywhere, and at the time, and it's that's what it is. It is a amalgamation of many different styles of music that came together to basically make what is known as traditional Appalachian in old time music. And they took something old and made it new again, and made it theirs. And I think that that's one of the most important things you can do. Music should always be in the heart of whoever is making the music. And if it's the old stuff that calls to you, good. And if it's the old stuff that calls to you, but you want to make it your own or make it new or change it slightly uh, for yourself, that's also good as well. So I hope I answered some of the questions. If you have any other questions, feel free to hit me back up. I promise I will get back much quicker. And thank you.